I wasn't going to bring up Twilight either. Why
the post. The post.
What?
What's that behind you?
About?
What's that?
What's wrong?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You're sick, Shad.
Why are you gay?
Let's talk about toxic fandom, shall we? Because that's us. That's supposed to be us. We'll just start out by saying toxic fandom is a complete myth, and it's a phrase that was made up by the access media because the media has always hated the fans and the paying customer, and a lot of people in Hollywood hate them too. They think you should just roll up, throw them the money, shut the fuck up, and enjoy whatever the fuck they feed you. The corporate media has become as insufferable as Hollywood, if not more. They're the ones who have gaslit the fans. They're the ones who have purposely ran out and said, is this the gayest Marvel show ever? You know, like, you get what you deserve, but now they are losing their relevance and their influence, and they are fucking pissed, and they're scared because we are the media now. And when I say we, royal we, you in the chat, everybody on Twitter, you have taken their job. You are more informative, you are more honest, and you're more entertaining than they will ever be. And now the chickens have come home to roost, and they are starting to panic. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all that an article like this comes out in a major trade after the rewriting Ripley bullshit and after some other coordinated attacks on Twitter. I mean, it could all be a coincidence. I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but it is kind of funny that this happened in successive months, and Ryan himself said this is only the beginning. And, you know, nobody was mentioned by name, but we could certainly assume they must be talking about Drinker. They have to be talking about Drinker. Because I know when I go to LA and when I talk to people, he's the first person who gets brought up every fucking time.
Wow.
Every time. One of the biggest, most influential, he'll hate to hear this, one of the biggest, most influential critics in Hollywood right now is the critical Drinker.
Wow.
And
it's articles like this that let everybody know just how much influence these guys have. I wouldn't be reminded of it if they didn't keep writing articles about it.
Well, it's just, should that even be surprising if the videos are getting like millions of views compared to like the level of engagement or lack thereof with a lot of like mainstream movie reviews? You know, at this point, right, like a lot of it is just, oh, what's the aggregate score? But people aren't generally like looking at the individual reviews that are given to these films by any of these outlets compared to like the kind of viewership that YouTubers would end up getting on videos talking about these movies and TV shows and games and whatnot.
Not just the publications, but the actual content themselves. When we look at the numbers of like Rings of Power on the first week, it gets less views than a Critical Drinker video or like a Nerdrotic video or EFAP. Like these creators are getting more views than the shows that are being produced. Like
shows that cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly. That's just a handful, and then you count all the different content that's out there that is the Mr. Beasts or whatever, or streamers streaming. You're fighting against all of that. It's just embarrassing for them because they're so on the back foot right now.
I think the reason why it's surprising is not so much that it should be, but because they always pretend it doesn't affect them. And we recently saw at the end of Rings of Power and the after show, he literally goes, my favorite Tolkien quote is, evil cannot create anything new. It can only pervert and destroy whatever came before. That means we must have done something good, which was literally the start of the criticism for season 1 in the trailer. And it is a paraphrase quote.
It's a paraphrase. Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's not
which means he's literally referring to what the actual event, because it is an incorrect quote or a paraphrase quote, which he is getting word for word correct. And he kind of pauses and looks over to his left as if he's reading it as well. It's a bit weird in the clip. It shows that it's getting to them when that is almost the last thing they do in the after show at the end of the series. It's like, well, does that change your mind?
It's funny, Gary, that you brought up the red carpet, the gayest Marvel movie ever, because the person that I got confused with that guy, who is Mark Malkin, is Adam B. Very, who wrote this story. He's the author of this article. But even more interesting than that, you want to know who contributed to this article?
Who?
If you scroll all the way down to the very, very, bottom of the page,
let's take a look.
You'll see.
Amandla Stenberg? No.
Mark Malkin contributed to this story. So the two super gay woke dudes that I got confused that work at Variety, they both joined forces for this report on toxic fandom. So shout out to Variety.
Shout out to Variety. Big shout out. Toxic fandom. How Hollywood is battling fans who are just out for blood, from social media boot camps to superfan focus groups. What a bunch of retards. And they go, that statement's toxic. No, it's factual because you're retarded, because you have made an enemy of the audience. By the way, the term toxic fandom is pretty much most of fandom at this point. It's anybody who criticizes anything. Some of us get a little hyperbolic. Some of us go a little too far. There are certainly a bunch of fucking assholes out there, but mostly it's just fans going, I really hate what you did to Galadriel. I don't hate Galadriel. Yeah. I like Galadriel a lot. She's one of my favorite characters in Lord of the Rings, and I hate what you've done to her. I hate what you did to Luke Skywalker. I hate what you did to Han Solo. And then when they do their identity politics, which is prioritizing somebody's skin color and their look, we will clown them with their own fucking language and point it out that it's the bigotry of low expectations. So they pick these people, they know they're going to be controversial, and this whole article breaks it down, by the way, and it's like, thank you. This is what we've been talking about the whole time. Hollywood doesn't care about your cause. The corporation doesn't give a fuck about your identity. And once they don't feel like they can benefit from you, they will fucking bail you. And that's what they're a little bit worried about.
You can understand why this journalist likes it, though, because he is of the group that they're catering to, and so to him, The Acolyte was good because it was the gayest Star Wars show ever. That's why he asked the questions about it. Yeah, it was probably a bit clickbait, but also because that to him is what makes a show good, that it's catering to him, he can see himself in the thing and everything else. So it's not really surprising that the journalists, which are also in that target category, love all the stuff and think everyone hates it for the same reason that they enjoy the show. It's just they can't appreciate what the audience actually likes, and they think there's massively more numbers of them than there actually are.
Yeah, we saw that with Doctor Who, where they said for every, bigot they lose will get 2 more or 3 more fans who love diversity and stuff like that. It's like, how's that working out for you? And, this whole premise about, these fans are just out for blood. You're 100% right, Gary, where I would love it if these shows were good. Yes. I would love a high budget Lord of the Rings TV show that, cataloged the creation of the rings. That would be friggin' great. And my naivety, look at back this sweet summer child, when Rings of Power was first announced, I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, okay, this might be. And then of course we saw where that went. Like Wheel of don't get me started.
In this article, which we will read, Shad, they display their ignorance of all of this. Like, they did zero research. They didn't watch anybody's videos. They didn't read any of their own fucking articles. They didn't do any actual fucking reporting on this. And there'll be a great example later with House of the Dragon, with the blowback from that they completely misrepresented. But these are the same assholes who misrepresented Joker, saying it was going to be incel violence when, did you watch the Joker? Did you see it thematically what it is? It's quite the opposite. All right, so on August 28th, Amandla Stenberg, man, they're going to bring her up until the end of fucking time, man. She is the new Rose Tico. Yep. She is Kelly Marie Tran. She is going to be brought up for the next decade. The lead of the Disney Star Wars series, The Acolyte, posted an 8.5-minute video to her Instagram stories about Lucasfilm's abrupt decision not to pick up the show for a second season just a month after season 1 finale on D+. And abrupt.
Because if it wasn't obvious that show wasn't going to get renewed.
Yeah.
The Acolyte being canceled was a huge win. It absolutely was a win. And they see it as a major loss. And it was a loss. And it also explains why other shows maybe haven't been canceled and they're just like, okay, we'll take it in the shorts on this one because we don't want to deal with this shit. We don't want to deal with the other part of the fandom that one could argue using their language. This is not anything I use in my everyday language ever, but using their language is toxic. Like, who's been more toxic to Disney since the cancellation? It hasn't been Disparu. He's been fighting for hashtag renew the Acolyte, and so have I. Okay, we wanted to come back. No, it's been those other guys, those really positive, fun guys who want to deplatform everybody. It's not a huge shock for me, Stenberg said. Since the series was announced in 2020, it was announced in 2020. We started experiencing a rampage of, I would say, hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred and hateful language toward us. I wonder who wrote that for her. Stenberg was unavailable for comment for this story.
Show me the videos that identifies it as hyper-conservative.
You guys are, you're trying to conserve, I guess, the stories, to conserve the lore.
Maybe in that sense.
They're not in Victorian outfits. This is disgusting.
It's nice that in that little blurb about Amandla Stenberg, they somehow failed to mention that just 5 weeks earlier, or whatever it was, she released a diss track calling Star Wars fans racist for not liking her show. It's weird that you leave out that context.
A source in either Variety or Deadline said that contributed to the cancellation because it became an easy target to attack.
Yep.
and was a bad idea. So
yep, Disney made the right call in this one. They should have canceled it, and that was a horrible idea because after episode 3 of The Acolyte, I would say shit was dying down until she put out that diss track, and that just put it
It's just like
to the stratosphere. In other words, The Acolyte was the latest high-profile target of toxic fandom, the catch-all term that the media uses for when fan criticism curdles from good faith dissatisfaction into a relentless negativity, often bigoted online campaign against either the project or its stars or creative leaders in a franchise economy increasingly dependent upon established audience devotion to drive the bottom line. The threat of toxic fandoms poisoning the enthusiasm has become a seemingly intractable headache for almost every studio, and it's only getting worse. So what they're saying is, yeah, good. Yes, because that built-in audience. So when you buy a franchise for billions of dollars, what are you buying? You're buying the audience. You're buying the people.
You're buying their goodwill.
Yeah. You're buying a built-in audience. Ryan talked about it in his video. That number is small, but the small hardcore fans are what keep franchises alive. What kept Doctor Who alive during the dark times? We're back in the dark times, but the first dark times when it was canceled, it was Doctor Who fans. It was a small sect of Doctor Who fans that kept that thing going. Same with Star Trek. They willed Star Trek into existence in film. That's how important those fans and valuable those fans could be. So those would be, I would argue, maybe I'm crazy, guys, those would be the ones you don't want to piss off. Those would be the ones you want to make happy because they are the shepherds. They are the ones who bring people in.
This article has learned nothing because it used the phrase good faith dissatisfaction. Well, the opposite to that would be bad faith dissatisfaction, which means that you actually like the show, but you're lying about it and saying it's bad when you genuinely like it. So all your criticism is fake. So they still don't agree that any of the content they put out is a bad thing and it's just being accurately reviewed. It is literally a load of people going around and lying about it for months, and then for some reason the audience that watches it agrees with them because they're brainwashed. I don't know.
With fandoms, it's pretty simple. It's good to try different things once in a while, and there are ways to do that. But when you have your base IP, Star Wars, your base IP, Han, Luke, and Leia, you just don't fuck with that. You just don't fuck with that. And the actors, yes, there's always going to be criticism, especially around Star Wars. It's been going on for years. You just don't acknowledge it, and you go, hey, we did the best we could. I hope you enjoy our movie. That's all you need to say. And you know what? You won't get any shit, but that'll let the work speak for itself.
Well, and if you're going to take a gamble as well, and you spend $200 million on it, don't get upset if it doesn't pay off. Like, you're spending a lot of money on these projects. They need to have an audience. You have to have an audience. Otherwise, you can't justify the existence of these projects.
Do we have influence or do we not have influence? Does the toxic fans, are they a majority or are they a minority? Because if they're a minority, then why would the studios give a shit about it?
Garrett,
they would go, oh, it's not affecting us because it's a minority.
They definitively get to the bottom of it in this article.
I do like the level
sarcasm.
of how Amandla Stenberg said, yeah, no, it was the toxic fans, and then the writer of the article was like, so yeah, the Acolyte was the victim of toxic fans. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess if she says so, then yeah,
sure.
Like, what kind of level of reporting is that? Of just, well, she said it, so yeah, that's the truth.
Well, that's all reporters have lost their way a long fucking. I mean, this is decades ago.
This one's labeled as news. This is not labeled as an op-ed.
Yeah, this is labeled as news. So they want the customer who reads this to click on ads. The customer that, whether they intended to or not, they risk offending by calling toxic. And I guarantee you, some people who read this are going to go, well, fuck you. You know,
exactly.
Why should I click on your fucking ad when you're insulting possibly half of the audience, possibly more? It comes with the territory, but it's gotten incredibly loud in the last couple of years. I would say that the fan's voice has been around for a couple of years, but maybe you just noticed because you're so fucking late on shit.
What I think is that there's been so much bad shit lately that it feels like overwhelmingly people do not like things because they're labeling all criticism as toxic. That's effectively what they've tried to gaslight everyone into doing.
A lot of the fans tried to hang on to it. It was like, I love this property so much, I want it to get good. And I think we've reached a point where even the normies are just getting fed up and they're checking out, and it's reached a tipping point.
They're going from IP to IP to IP. Like, when you piss off people of an IP, those people don't go away. On your next job, they're still there, and they're annoyed from what you did last time. You pissed me off with Wheel of Time, and then I've stayed around for every other thing, and I've watched you cascade through various different Star Wars properties, Halo, games franchises, and so you're just pissing off more and more people, and the snowball's growing. So it's you which is creating the ever more pissed off group of people.
This is important. Like, if you could identify anything as Disparu's villain origin story, it's the Wheel of Time adaptation.
I was making gaming videos before that.
That's what created him.
Yes, there's crossover in every fandom though, because that's what leads you. And then you start covering all this stuff, and you start seeing certain repeated themes and everything, especially the stuff that fails abysmally. And it's usually a focus on the message prior to anything else. And we forced characters in, but we made unnecessary creative decisions that actually broke the story to service the message. I mean, the Rings of Power is a great example. Like, this year has devolved into absurdity as far as bad content. Like, we've got the holdovers from a bad era. I don't know if it's as bad as last year. Was pretty fucking bad, dude. Last year was abysmal. And now we just have things that should have come out last year, to be honest with you. Imagine how bad last year would, if Agatha had come out and Echo had come out when they were supposed to. Yes, Echo came out this year.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Wow.
It's
been a long year. And you know what? It's so much easier for these mainstream outlets to attack the content creators because we are more visible. You can put a face and a name to it, and we are more outspoken. And it's like the viewer, the actual, people that don't have as big of a social media presence, it's more kind of nebulous and mysterious. It's like they wouldn't know who to blame for nobody watching. It's just easier for them to point the finger at people like us, I guess.
In other words, people have been saying this the whole time. Now you can just hear us. This is the way fandom has been forever. It will be forever. And you could thank the internet, whether you like it or not, the double-edged sword. It was great to get those hashtags and the watch parties for things like Game of Thrones and early on with Star Wars, and have theory videos. And you want those, except for Star Wars, who attacks the biggest channel that does Star Wars theory videos. It's not very smart. And instead, you all of a sudden just make an enemy of them. And then once you do that, it's like the meme that Jeremy always posts, you throw a bunch of fucking shit, you shovel shit over the fence and it gets thrown back and you're all toxic fans. It's like, well, a lot of us just respond. A lot of us, it's just a counterpunch. Most of the time, we're just minding our own business. And if you come out with a good show like The Penguin, we'll say, hey, it's good. It's a good show.
Fantastic show.
If the toxic fans, in inverted commas, are a big enough group that these people can dictate whether your show succeeds or fails, have you ever considered making content for them?
And that's the conundrum that they have. Either the toxic fans are just so small and insignificant, they don't matter. Yet at the same time, we're developing practices internally to make sure we don't piss these people off. It's not both of those things. It can only be one or the other. Either small and insignificant, or they're the ones that determine the fate of these shows. Reality is the truth is somewhere in the middle. You're labeling a bunch of fans as toxic who aren't actually toxic. And it happens to align with the way the general audience feels about these things as well.
They think the purity of the first version will never be replaced, or you've done something to upset the canon of a beloved franchise, and they're going to take you down for doing so.
Yes.
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 Unironically, yes.
Yes.
Also, on that note, if they made something good, even if it was changed somewhat from the original, if it's genuinely really good, it'll be embraced. Look, I bring it up all the time, but the Disney Cinderella remake is better than the animation. It is better than the animation, though. Okay, I'm just and I'm being vindicated on that again and again. By
Better than the animation?
God, you're autistic with that.
The Penguin is nothing like the Penguin in the comic books at all. The origin is different. The way he acts is different. The world is different, but it's a good show.
Still good.
So it's good. So we like it. We talk positively
for now.
about it.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see.
No, but if that's your attitude, if that's the marketing executive's attitude, that explains all the problems we're having. The purity of Lord of the Rings. If you think that's so sacred, motherfucker, we do.
Yeah.
I think when they use the argument about why won't they just let us destroy canon, they're implicitly saying that the show is good. If you replace canon with something, you're saying your new version is better than the original.
Or you just say the canon never existed. You could just say that.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes toxic fandoms behave reactively. A House of the Dragon episode features two female characters kissing, and an episode of The Last of Us focusing on a gay couple were both review bombed. Okay, before we even move on, House of the Dragon. What's the context of House of the Dragon and the kiss at the end there?
Yeah, the lesbian kiss in Game of Thrones had nothing to do with people being upset about that kiss. It was about who it was with. We were being critical at the time of even the way Massaria had kind of wormed her way, no pun intended, into Rhaenyra's trust. And it was kind of silly for Rhaenyra to be that trusting. and then out of nowhere they have a kiss, and it's like never addressed again through the rest of the episode or the rest of the season. It was who it was and when it was happening that was the problem.
Exactly.
Because guess what? In the first season, when there was a gay kiss between Lenore and Joffrey, was there a mass outrage?
Nope.
No, because those two characters had a sexual relationship in the book.
That's what I was talking about too. They did no fucking research. They didn't like parse out why there was a controversy. The reason we were pissed about the kiss was, for one, it was like ad-libbed. It wasn't even scripted, and it made no fucking sense. Myseri is a fucking terrible character, but like, dude, there's gay people in Game of Thrones. Like, there's a gay relationship in the original series, in the original books. There's trans people in the fucking books in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's all there, but it actually makes sense. They make them real fucking characters. That's a misunderstanding. And with The Last of Us, like, you'd have to talk about that, Ryan. I don't fucking care.
So there is a character in the game where if you read a couple notes here and there and read between the lines, you can tell, okay, this person had a partner, he was gay, blah, blah, blah. They decided in an 8 or 10 episode adaptation of that game to carve out an entire episode all about this gay love story that we never really saw in the video game at all. That was a lot of the criticism surrounding that, more so the amount of attention and time that they spent on it, as opposed to just doing it the way that the game did. And maybe people weren't as into seeing Nick Offerman's hairy asshole as they thought.
And at the end of House of the Dragon, if Rhaenyra had made out with one of the Cargill twins before they killed each other, you know, it would have been stupid. Like, we would have complained about it the same fucking way.
I think it's like a fundamental misunderstanding of what nerds care about and what the jocks think they care about, right? So they think, oh, it's all, well, just give them whatever slop it is if it's named that. It doesn't matter the minutia. Who cares about that? But nerds care about the details. Nerds care about the structure of how the story is told, or how the characters are portrayed, or the events that you're supposed to be adapting, but they're interpreting it as toxicity.
From memory, with The Last of Us, didn't the guy that created that say that he realized people didn't want to watch that, so he had to sneak it into another property because it was like giving people their vegetables?
I'll pick my own fucking vegetables, thank you very much. I don't need you to serve them to me. So they talk about The Last Jedi, an entire YouTube. Okay, go back.
Do you want this one?
YouTube. That's what they want to talk about.
Oh my God, all the way back to The Last Jedi.
They go back to the last fucking Jedi.
2017.
The Marvels.
Oh, the old days.
God.
Let's be very fucking clear with the Marvels. It was just garbage. It wasn't
bad.
woke garbage. It was just plain ass flaming
Marvels is absolute
shit covered garbage.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just absolute nonsense, like stupid movie. Like,
and the Boys
so terrible.
Was warped into, I mean, it certainly had its point of view, but it was warped into being anti-corporatism, calling out superheroes, the traditional superheroes, celebrities, the military industrial complex, and turned into hate Trump. I mean, like, that's what it turned into. It's just for a certain audience. After season 2, it was one of a few projects that made incels the bad guys. So scroll down a little bit. Yeah, the YouTube ecosystem that's been beating your ass, beating Hollywood's ass, beats Netflix. It's everybody here. It's because the people you have been vilifying are now your competition, motherfucker. How do you like it? But let's get down to the Lord of the Rings. So they talked about the actors of Kalur cast as elves and dwarves in the Rings of Power. Death threats aimed at Leslie Jones during a press tour in 2016's Ghostbusters. Now, let's double back.
We're just digging back in the back past, man.
Is there anything that happened in the 70s we need to know about, Variety? With the Rings of Power, people were calling out because it was a deviation from the lore. It was a major red flag. Now, could the character have worked? It worked with Corlys Velaryon in House of the Dragon, so yeah, it could have worked. But it didn't work because all you did was put a character of color, using your fucking crazy racist language. You didn't add anything to it. There were other races canonically that they could have used and decided to make them all multicultural for politically correct reasons to reflect the Los Angeles that they live in today. That's it. So we noticed the red flags. What we were more concerned about was, what are you going to do with the story? And when I was joking 3 or 4 years, it was a year before the damn show came out, and I said they're probably going to put Galadriel in a bunch of fucking armor, and she's going to be slaying orcs and leading an all-female troop of Numenorians. I was wrong about that. Okay. It was only half. And then they did it, and I was like, dude, I was fucking joking. And you did it. There's also other red flags. They hired a couple of rejects from Bad Reboot, and now we know why they never got a screen credit other than a bad Star Trek movie, because they really suck.
All you can judge this shit on is what you see. It's like a movie trailer, right? Yep. The purpose of a movie trailer is to get people interested, and you're hoping that they have a positive opinion of whatever you put out. The same way when we have press releases or cast interviews or conventions or anything, that is all we can judge these projects off before we actually see something. So when you go out and you're talking about all these things that seem to fly in the face of Tolkien, even though you're saying, oh, we respect him, we respect my promise. But, we decided we wanted to make this for a modern audience to reflect everybody that loves Tolkien and not just white people or whatever, like the phraseology they were using. You certainly should judge it based off that. Because if they said something that got you hyped or got you invested, they would want you judging it based off that, because that's the purpose of those press junkets and things like that they do. So yes, sometimes we see warning signs or red flags before a project airs, and we're critical about that. That's how it fucking works. And every once in a while, we're wrong about that thing. I was wrong about the first season of House of the Dragon. I thought it was going to be a total shit show. I thought it was a great season of television. And you just got to admit when you're wrong.
So far, wrong about the Penguin.
Yeah.
I was. I just thought it'd be boring and average. And it's not. It's good. By the way, somebody was paid a lot of money to figure this out. The vast majority of any fandom are casual fans, says John Van Sitters, VP.
Then why write this article?
VP of Star Trek brand development. Well, I would argue that Star Trek has lost 99% of the casual fans, if not 100% of the casual fans. So you should probably be fired, but oh well. Who has been with the storied franchise since the 90s. The number of people who live and die on their franchise is very, very few. I can't believe a Star Trek guy is saying this. And then there are those who come after things that they espouse to love with Venom are really, really tiny subset of that already smaller subset of fandom. That smaller subset of fandom in Star Trek got movies made, bro. And these are the people you disrespected. And now, unfortunately for you, Star Trek man, it's the same fucking fandom. You've lost generations. It's the same old motherfuckers. I went to a fucking Star Trek convention in 2019. Average age, 40. 40 as an average age is not good for your franchise at all.
I actually think the first part of it is accurate. The idea that, yes, when you do put on a show like this, most of the general audience, they're not going to be diehards, right? But you do need to get those diehards on board, because they, and the way that they react to something, it is going to be seen by a lot of different people. And usually for a project like this, if you have the diehards on board, the general audience might feel a little bit better about something like that, as opposed to if every single person who loves Tolkien and loves Lord of the Rings is almost unanimously saying this is bullshit. You have a problem on your hands getting the general audience invested in that too.
The perfect example for that is anime. You mentioned anime, you just get a whole list of recommendations. So you always need the big fans because they tell everyone else about it.
They're the ones that buy the product, buy the physical media, buy t-shirts, buy merch. Those people.
Yes. I guarantee you that when that Acolyte book comes out about Jordan Jecki, it's not going to sell 80,000 copies.
I don't think it'll send 8,000.
I don't think they're going to sign that somehow, some way.
Particularly when it's negative, toxic conversation, we don't even engage. There you go. That's what you should do, says the marketing executive. It's when people engage. Like this toxic people, man. How many times is toxic used in this article?
It's used quite a bit.
Yeah.
Look it up.
You try to not give it too much oxygen. One principal concern is that reacting to these kinds of attacks risks alienating fans who are unhappy with creative choices about a franchise but haven't tipped over into abusive behavior. So, a studio may attempt to amplify friendlier voices instead. We'll reply to comments that are positive and elevate those things. I have no problem with that.
That's fine.
That's fine. Still,
yes, you should not be fighting with fans on social media.
Yeah,
I agree.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Again, a top executive said that. Somebody who probably makes quite a bit of money. Still, toxic fandoms have grown so pernicious that they become a fact of life for many.
God, so dramatic.
Yeah.
Wow. It's not that serious.
It's always been this way. It'll always be this way. These people must be new, or they were never paying attention. A lot of them are posers, tourists, or bankers, or executives who are interested. Most of them don't watch this shit, and they don't know, and they don't understand fandom. the thing with nerds is we're not an easy lay. You got to take us out to dinner.
I was gonna say, I don't put that on me.
Even with Ryan, you got to take him to Taco Bell first. Okay, so like, don't believe that shit. You got to get the order right.
Yeah, there are some ground rules, obviously, like no condom. Clearly, I do have some standards.
Don't like the feel.
Not gonna put on a rubber.
The other side of that is we're not an easy lay, but once you win us over, we are devoted. We'll support you forever as long as you show basic respect to the story and to the customer. And so powerful that while talent executives and publicists will privately bemoan the issue, fear of inadvertently triggering another backlash kept several studios from speaking for this story, even on the background. As one rep put it, it's just lose-lose. Now, I would like to add that multiple people have reached out to me and others on this panel and people that I know and Drinker privately saying, we fucking hate what's going on in Hollywood. You could even use the term toxic Hollywood. We can't speak freely. We hate working on this shit. I talked to somebody who worked on Rebel Moon, and they knew it was shit from the start, and they like Zack Snyder. The guy said, he's a nice guy. He's a bit of a magpie. You probably shouldn't give him total creative freedom or let him go on a live stream. And that's according to this person. But we knew this was shit. He worked on Army of the Dead, too, and said he knew that was shit, too, all the way through. But it was a job, so they know. They know. Those who did talk with Variety all agreed that the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms in the first place. In addition to standard focus group testings, you don't need to waste your money on fucking focus groups. Handpick some people to talk to. That's all you need to do. Some of them will do it for a lunch. Some of them might buy you lunch. Studios will assemble a specialized clusterfuck of superfans to access possible marketing materials.
What kind of superfans?
Yeah.
What kind of superfans are these?
People that will agree with them. That's the kind of superfans they're looking for.
Yeah. So, essentially, we can pull it off now. But, and again, Ryan talked about in his video, they said, well, it's just a really small subset of toxic fans with, I guess, a ton of power that we're scared to death of. That's the article summed up.
15 times toxic is used.
Holy
shit.
It's
bizarre because they seem to be talking about it like, oh, well, it's small, but trying to imply it's like, well, it has a disproportionate impact. It's like, impact how? It makes people not want to watch it? And how? Like, how does that work? Why would people be convinced not to watch these shows, unless there were points being made about, like, the writing, for instance, or adherence to continuity or law or any of those sorts of things that are important to people?
I think what they're trying to say is that 13% of the fans commit 50% of the criticism. That's really where they're going with that.
This may come as shocking news to Hollywood, but the audience is smarter than you. Okay. Every day.
Not a doubt.
Every fucking day. So just pull up the headline on this one, Garrett. What's the title of this article? Is Disney bad at Star Wars and anal assists? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. They're very bad at it, and they've been bad from the get-go. Hindsight is 20/20, and it's higher than that in this case. Kathleen Kennedy's the worst executive in the history of Hollywood. She's taking the most venerated fucking cinematic intellectual property, Star Wars, of all time, and turned it into a category, soon to be a subcategory, on a fledgling streaming service that's never turned a profit. So that's what Disney Star Wars is. We have an entire thesis on all of our channels of like what's happened to Star Wars over the last few years. So we don't need to go over this guy's anal assists at all, because the answer is yes. They're horrifically bad at making Star Wars, so much so that Star Wars doesn't exist anymore. There is only Disney Star Wars. So we have the Toxic Fan article, then we have this article, and then we have the Joker article, which is basically the fuck you to the fans one. By the way, again, all three websites we have just shown you, owned by the same company.
Surprise!
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.